Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And just wanted to do this lesson. I was reading this article here. It's a pretty interesting article concerning the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is now under some heat. Now, years ago, they're pretty much that. I believe they're the same organization that had us. When I say us, I mean they classified us as the Black Hebrew Israelites on their hate group and Black supremacist group and X, Y, and Z, and they have other groups on there as well. But what I wanted to highlight here was, as I was reading this article, you'll hear oftentimes from the elders and brothers and so on about agents, right? They're agents within the camps. And, it's something that sometimes you hear it so much, but maybe you haven't actually had an experience, with that situation. So it sounds like one of the many things that are just, it's true, but it's like, yeah, okay, well, we know, right? But it's like it's not theoretical, right? It's not it's not an understatement. It's not like we just say it just for fun, but it's real, right? And on the actual practical level, it's a much more different experience than you just hearing it on a video, right? Of somebody mentioning that, hey, you got to watch out, you got agents in the camps, versus you actually going through an experience where you're like, oh shoot. So in here, as I was reading this, which the scriptures told, Lord told us about this, it's nothing new, right? They had the same situation you have now, you had even back during the time of the apostles. Okay, so it says, House panel orders Southern Poverty Law Center to turn over communications with Biden DOJ. So I'll read a little bit of this here, and then I'll highlight the point in here that I wanted to, that really got me thinking into doing this lesson, right? So it says, House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan on April 23rd gave the Southern Poverty Law Center, or SPLC, until April 30th to hand over documents regarding its relationship with the Biden-Harris Department of Justice and the FBI as part of a federal prosecution of the civil rights group. Now, that lets you know they were already working with the federal government anyway. But it's also interesting because I believe if my memory serves me right, Vocab Malone referenced, right, the SPLC, in his many failed attempts and antics to demonize us. And he tried to use it as a credible source, right? So it says here, in a letter to Brian Fair, SPLC interim president and chief executive, Jordan wrote that publicly available documents revealed how the Justice Department partnered closely with the SPLC during the Biden-Harris administration, including scheduling regular meetings, giving the SPLC early access to federal law enforcement data, and allowing SPLC employees to train federal prosecutors. The letter was also posted to social media. So keep in mind that this wasn't just some arbitrary group that spawned up that just happened to take such an interest in classifying groups as hate groups and Black supremacists and this and that and the third. But they had access to certain technologies and information, and they were gathering information. And this is exactly what, Esau does, right? It's nothing new. But it says here, the chairman's demand came 2 days after a grand jury in Montgomery, Alabama, returned an 11-count indictment alleging the SPLC had committed wire fraud, made false statements to a federally insecured bank, and conspired to conceal money laundering. Somebody's in some deep shit. The, the indictment accuses the SPLC of funneling more than $3 million between 2014 and 2023 to no fewer than 8 paid informants in violent racist organizations. And then they list a few in here, right? The KKK, United Klans of America, and all these other groups on here. But as you keep reading, you'll see like the part of their job wasn't just to come out and say, oh, this group is a hate group or this group is this. They had informants, agents, okay, that they used to infiltrate all the various different groups, and some to try and either plant information, gather information, or fuel racial tensions. Right? Jumping down here, it says Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche alleged that the SPLC had used paid operatives within extremist circles to incite and intensify racial tensions, arguing the civil rights organization fostered the very threats it claimed to fight. So when you suddenly see different videos, right, different camps doing strange things, that it's like, yo, what's the whole point in doing that? And then putting it up online, you know what I mean? Like broadcasting it, going to parks and yelling racial slurs, and basically like putting on this militant appearance, and it's like just doing all the wrong things, everything that the scriptures say not to give any appearance of evil, and it's like they're just doing exactly that. And you wonder why. Like, what do you gain out of that? How does that benefit anything? But now it starts to make all the more sense. I mean, we said it at the time that these guys are agents. You got a lot of agents in the camps, not just in camps that are either, disagree with what we teach, but even in our own camps. Okay? So when it says here paid operatives, right, or agents within extremist circles, do you think that magically they're just going to exclude the camps that you are involved in? Of course not. Okay? And they keep using this tactic because it's effective, right? The whole point of an agent is to you either have one that is already a trained agent that is sent to infiltrate, okay, a certain group, and then you have some who they use as informants, right? They go to people that they see are vulnerable, and then they either blackmail, threaten, or entice with money, okay, to turn their minds and use them as informants or agents. Some to either provide information, or some to start to give a certain look or appearance that they can use to justify a certain categorization of that group. Okay? But you forget that this is the work of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. The fact that they can only do what the Lord has instructed them to do at the end of the day. And they don't even see that. Okay? But all your efforts are in vain, because all it really does is further along the Lord's plan. You're not actually doing any damage at all to the Lord's actual plan, to his the event he is set to happen. At all. Okay, at all. What he wants to happen is what's going to happen. And that's why the truth is still going to go forth. So, let me see if there's anything else in here. Yeah, I mean, it goes on some more and more stuff in here. Yeah, quote unquote, taking on violent hate and extremist groups is among the most dangerous work there is. And we believe it is also among the most important work we do. Yeah, okay, and then so on and so forth. But now you start to see like the Edomite comes and kiss my boot and lick my boot, or there's altercation here, and then it's like all the things that these weird behaviors that certain individuals in certain groups that call themselves Israelites or teachers or whatever do, right? Which is just like it's like deliberately going and saying, all right, I'm giving you everything you need, to a group like SPLC to then justify whatever claims it is you're pushing. But you start to see that when we say these things, we're not just saying it because it sounds good and we just want to say it just to say it. It's real. And sometimes that goes over people's heads because they haven't experienced it on a real life practical level, right? So it still sounds like things that you hear, right? You haven't experienced what it's like to actually be in that situation. It's like, oh shit, yeah, this is more than just words that you hear from Apostle Tahar or the other apostles or brothers in a video somewhere. Like now you're actually seeing it. Okay. So what I did here was I looked up here the word or the term informant. And it says here an informant, also called an informer, or as a slang term, a snitch, rat, canary, stool pigeon, stoolie, tout, or grass. Damn. Among other terms, is a person who provides privileged information or usually damaging information intended to be intimate, concealed, or secret about a person or organization to an agency. See, so you have SPLC, which is behaving like this middleman, right? This middleman group, and then meanwhile they're working with the government to either infiltrate, perform certain actions, or retrieve certain information that can be used at an appointed time. Okay, on all these different groups. So it says here, but that's the thing, you can't hide from the creator of the mind, the creator of the eyes, the creator of the Most High created all that. But what are you really gonna hide from him? They think that this is about man, right? Oh, this is a group, it's an organization. We'll just use the same tactics we use, psychological tactics that work. It's tried and proven, and it always works. But you forget about the spirit. How are you going to psych the Most High? Like this is his program. How are you gonna get past that? So anyway, let me see if there's anything more on here. Oh, so also once again, it's no wonder, right, that you have. I think recently I saw a video a brother was doing, and on the thumbnail or the background picture, you see Haka, and the visual is basically saying like I was wrong, something along those lines, and then the name Yahushua is like crossed out in X, and then the name Jesus is like checked in green. And it's just like, okay, it's not really a surprise, but it was just like it's a matter of time. Right? It's a matter of time. And as interesting as this is, right? If you really look at how there's this whenever certain individuals or groups start to deviate further and further from the true correct doctrine, there's one thing that is always almost all in common amongst all of them, and that is the name of the Lord. Now, on a spiritual level, it makes sense because the Lord takes his spirit away from them. He takes his name away from them. But behind the scenes, it's interesting how these groups, different camps that seem to teach completely different things or seem to be varied or don't seem to even be agreeing, at least on the forefront with each other, all seem to have this thing in common, which just comes down to the name. They all seem to push this. It's not the name, and it's deviating from what the actual names of the Heavenly Father and his Son are. So say you have 5 different groups that are all, they're paid off or sold out behind the scenes. If the person or group that they're selling out to is the same group that has the same motive and agenda, then it does make sense, right? Group A sells out, and then whoever it is they're selling out to tells them, look, the primary thing you gotta do is stop teaching in that name. So you notice when they start teaching, these weird wayward doctrines that it's like, bro, what? Like, you went off the deep end. You're not even in the ballpark. You just left the damn state. But what is the one thing you see there? The name. Then another group that's like, yeah, this is that. We more about this and blah, blah, blah. They come and talk their BS on camera. And what do they also do? The name. No, the name ain't this. The name is not Yahushua. The name is not Yahweh. Is this, is that. So it always comes down to that. And we know that because at the end of the day, whoever it is they're getting their orders from know the power in the name of the Lord. Okay? And they know that the spirit is compelling. So they have to try and get as many people that are listening to stray away from the true name of the Lord as possible. But you're only going to get those the Lord has given up to you. That's why I said before, it's all in vain. It's all in vain, honestly. Like, this is just a part of the movie. So this is Galatians chapter 2, verse, I'll start at 2 just for a bit of context here. It says here, "And I went up by revelation and communicated unto them that gospel which I preached among the Gentiles, but privately to them which were of reputation, lest by any means I should run and had run in vain. But neither Titus, who was with me, being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. And that because of false brethren, unawares brought in, who came in privately to spy out our liberty, which we have in Hamashiach Yahushai, that they might bring us into bondage." Now, here, it's obviously it wasn't the FBI that sent them, right? Now, the point here is that you've always had individuals that came amongst the sincere brethren with a different mindset or a different motive. That's why it says false brethren. They feigned themselves as brothers or believers, but that was false, pseudo, right? It wasn't, they weren't sincerely actually believers, but they were brought in amongst the fold to spy for whatever cause, whoever sent them, whatever the case is. It may have been different in different time periods, but the formula is the same. False brethren, agents, informants that come in amongst the brethren, amongst the body, to spy out that liberty, to either falsify, gather information, do certain actions, okay, and basically complete their mission, as it says, that they might bring us into bondage. You see? So it is no surprise, but once again, I just wanted to highlight this here, that this is something that is actually, you saw the dates, right? Now, this is just from the accusations from the indictment, right, about this whole money funneling since 2014 to 2023. Okay, but this has been going on for a long, long time. And what that means is you have individuals, they literally get paid for this. Think about this. Somebody somebody can be working in, I don't know, some field, a nursing home, a retail store, whatever the case is. And they could have been there for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. And you're like, damn, you've been working for 15 years? Yeah, why? Because they're getting paid, right? That's literally their job. They get paid to do that. So if there's nothing that's, too much for them, then they have no reason to leave. So if somebody can work at a retail store for 15 years because they're getting paid, or work as a CNA for 15 years because they're getting paid, or at GameStop for 15 years because they're getting paid, then they can most definitely work as a spy or an agent or an informant for 15 years, 12 years, a long period of time. And what happens, especially in that role of like informants or agents, when you work in an organization or you infiltrate an organization for so long, it's easier to build that rapport, that trust, and sort of solidify yourself in a position where you reduce any, eyebrow raising or suspicions about you. That's literally their job. That's what they get paid to do. You see that? So definitely, that's why we're going to need to rely heavily. We should be anyway, but relying on the Spirit of the Lord. Because no matter how good you may be at lying, putting up a front, acting a certain kind of way, you cannot deceive the Spirit of the Lord. And the Spirit of the Lord is what works within us. So everything is going to come to light. And the story is going to play out exactly how Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai set it up. Judas was among the 12 for all those years. Guess what? The Lord put him there. If the Lord didn't want Judas there, he wouldn't be there. And what happened at the end? He fulfilled his role. But it was because that was needed for the story to play out the way it did. So long story short, moral of the lesson is, don't be surprised, because yes, you do have agents and informants, okay? And what do they call them? Operatives in the camps, in the groups, some that are closer to you, some that are not, but they're in there. Okay, so do not be surprised. They are in there. Well, yeah. So that's pretty much it on that. Just wanted to bring this out. I found it interesting as I was reading it here. We can see a lot of things pertaining to prophecy are moving, right? Those gears are moving. Certain parts, certain prophecies you read in the Old Testament, the New Testament, and some of them really mesh together, right? Some of those events are ones that go together. They're more tied at the hip than you think, because just because one is written in a book and another is written in a different chapter somewhere, some of them are really all meshed together. And as time goes on, you're gonna start to see the full picture. But that's why we got to have and maintain that faith in Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai. Because as the scriptures say, through much tribulation shall we enter into the kingdom. So with that, Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai Ba'asham Recha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.